Those are scenes from the 1998 movie Still Breathing. The romance stars Brendan Fraser, Joanna Going, and Oscar winner Celeste Holm. It was set and shot right here in San Antonio.
And those are some pretty big names, by the way. The movie was written and directed by San Antonio native James F. Robinson, and the director is back in town, and he joins us today to talk about his latest movie. It's called The Little Kite. James, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for being here.
We appreciate it. Well, of course, the first movie back in '98 was a good one and a success. Tell us about this new movie, where it takes place and what it's about.
It's a little different. It's a very simple story. It's called The Little Kite, and it's a completely indigenous movie with indigenous cast, and it's shot in Guatemala in the Mayan highlands. And it's about a little girl and her mother and the conflicts they have. But it's a lot about a different way of living, which is, I think, fantastic and fascinating to me.
Now, the new film, it wasn't shot here in San Antonio. It was shot in Guatemala. Tell us about that, and then what brings you here to San Antonio now?
Well, there are a lot of San Antonio roots to the film. Of course, I'm a San Antonian, and we have several people involved with it. KENS, who's a producer on it, is a longtime San Antonio producer, and Mike Moody, who I've worked with for many years, who owns a company here called MX3. And but it is completely in Guatemala. It's a film about these indigenous people, and really they live a life that is I find really fascinating. Somehow it's very simple and innocent, and it's also very wise and kind of otherworldly.
But I like how you're staying true to the story, because as we were discussing in the commercial break, sometimes directors will cut a couple of corners, and they're not going to shoot the movie where it actually takes place.
Yeah.
But in this case, you're not only shooting it where it takes place, but you're also using people that are local to the area.
Yeah, we're shooting in places that have never been shot in a movie before.
Wow.
So it gives a chance to make a film for a fairly modest amount of money that it has a real authenticity. And I think in a world where all of our movies are computer-generated images and superheroes and things like that, this is kind of an antidote to that. It's a little movie that's designed for an international audience, and it's in Spanish and two different Mayan languages.
Wow.
So it's a little different.
Looking forward to that. Now, I'm looking at some scenes there. Talk to us about...
we haven't really shot the whole film yet.
Okay.
We're going to be doing that in October. But this is stuff I shot last year, and this is the stories about this little girl who doesn't want to learn this traditional craft of weaving. And her mother wants her to. This is the bad person in the movie, the rival. And that's the mother, who's this indigenous woman who's 29. She has 4 kids. She's a master weaver. But they have this tradition in this town of making these gigantic kites on Todos Santos, the Day of the Dead, to connect with their ancestors that have departed. And you can see in this particular tradition in this town, the kites are 30 meters tall. They're the size of 3-story buildings. You can see them raising this. The men spend an entire year making these kites, which sometimes fall apart and only last for a few minutes.
And we have some of the material over here.
Well, it's related to the textiles that they weave, that they've been weaving for 3,000 years down there. So that's a big part of the story. Something like this takes about 6 months to make, and it's very important to these people because it shows their identity and their culture and who they are. And each pattern is unique to each village. So you can see this person is from Aguas Caliente, and this person is from someone else, and this person who wears this is from Neva, and it's really important to them because they've had a lot of trouble, obviously.
What connected you to these villages?
I first went down there about 30 years ago, and I was just really struck by these people. And I can't really put it in words exactly. But the more chaotic my life became in America, and we live very, we're always connected to something, and I would go down there and see these people that have been working on their land that their great-grandfather worked, and creating things like this that have a fantastic meaning for them when they could go to the store and buy something for nothing. So I really connected with that somehow, and I feel I really had to make this movie.
Now, the other thing I was wondering, because we mentioned in your movie in 1998, you've worked with some really big-time actors. We mentioned Brendan Fraser. In this movie, will there be those kind of A-listers or not really?
We have one part of an older man who's like a mentor to this little girl, and that's probably going to be a recognizable actor that you guys would know. I can't announce who it is until for a few more days. But I really like the idea of the authenticity of these people. I mean, and they have to speak all these languages. So that's a big challenge as a director, getting natural performances out of them. So that's a big part of my job. But I think it makes it something special. And Spanish is the second most spoken language on earth. So this is a film that we hope will do well in the United States, but it's also really geared for a worldwide audience. And I'm very excited about it.
Now, you've been traveling a lot, LA, obviously Guatemala. What brings you back here to your hometown?
Well, there's a lot of people in San Antonio that are financially supporting this film.
Okay.
So that's very important to me, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm going to Guatemala next week, and I'll be meeting some major potential sponsors and other people back there. And then I'll be back in San Antonio the end of the month, and I'm having a little kind of presentation on the film to some financial people.
Excellent.
Very
And
cool.
when do you expect the film to actually come out?
Well, if I had wood to knock on, I have glass. I'm hoping we start shooting in October, maybe
Okay.
the end of August. And then that means we would premiere the film at a place like maybe Cannes in May of 2019 or the Venice Film Festival. That means it would
great.
probably come out 2020.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to it. And you just came back from Cannes, right?
Yes.
What was that like?
It was crazy.
Yes, I can
And,
imagine.
we don't pay so much attention to it in the United States, but it is like the Oscars for the world.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a great place for a film like this to premiere because there's no American kind of bias. I mean, the Palme d'Or this year was won by a Japanese film, and there was, but it's different. It's glamorous and high security and. Anyway,
I know. I would
Celebrities.
ordinarily agree. I would say people here aren't so in touch with the Cannes or the festival
Yeah.
itself. I think this year it caught a little more notoriety with the Me Too
Yes.
movement, and it drew a little more attention.
and this film is very female-centric. In fact, there's only 2 male characters in
Really?
it. And it's really about the resilience of these people. And it's the women in Guatemala that carry this tradition. Because the
Wow.
men avoid wearing traditional clothes because of prejudice against Mayans. But the women are fiercely keeping up this up. And they have to start learning about 6 or 7 years old how to do this. It's extremely
Unbelievable.
time-consuming. So part of the story is this young girl just doesn't want to do it.
Right.
And that's part of the conflict. So it's
So
an upbeat
intricate.
story. It's not a tragic story. There's down parts of it, but it's kind of a family film, and we have high hopes.
Very cool. Very
Good.
cool. And San Antonio roots too. So we're
Yes.
looking forward to that. Well, thank you so much for being
Thanks,
here
Jess.
Thank you.
and talking to us about it. And again, we look forward to that, the little kite. There you go.
Oh.
We'll be right back.